本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。
What's good, Internet? It's January 14th, 2022, and you are listening to Waypoint Radio, episode 454. I'm your host, Rob Zachney, and I'm joined by Patrick Klepek.
Listening to, I like the weird energy we're starting with. Hello, I'm here. We did some major shit talking cut from the pod beforehand, and then we just rolled right into this thing.
What if I just bleep everything that is identifiable? Just like the beep on the beep beep, and that beep said beep beep beep.
Also, if we leave it to our listeners' imaginations, they will imagine stuff that is so much worse and less innocuous than what we were actually talking about.
It's true.
Anyway, once again, cleaning up our pre-show, making this all hang together, our producer, Ricardo Contreras.
Yo. How are you awake? It's 2, but I'm still asleep.
It's 2 in the afternoon, Cado.
Yeah, but aren't you sleeping bad? I'm sleeping bad. Are you sleeping bad? Did you fix it?
I'm sleeping terribly. No, I'm not. It's not fixed. Like, we're slowly clawing our way back to, like, I'm almost getting 6 hours a night.
Here's my mistake. My mistake today was not having coffee until 2 o'clock. It is now 2:10.
Cado applying his definition of lunch to coffee.
Yeah.
Were you, like, proving a point? Do you have a bet?
No, I made myself a matcha latte because I was like, that's gonna be delicious. Thinking that I didn't need the coffee yet. And then one rolls around and I'm like, I should have had a coffee. What was I thinking?
So I will say, like, there was, I feel like this comes and goes in, like, discourse, but during one of the waves of people being like, really, we just get hooked on coffee. We don't actually need it. A cup of cold water in the morning is all you need to wake you up. And I know that because I haven't had coffee in like 12 years. And so during one of those, I was like, I am pretty dependent on coffee. Maybe I should see what's on the other side of like not being dependent on coffee. So I went through like weeks of dealing with withdrawal headaches, which were pretty bad, and got to a point where like I don't need coffee, and my life was worse. Like, I went through all of that, and I was like, really, I just feel slightly less focused and more tired. And I really miss having coffee in the morning. So, we good job. We went to all of this to discover that life could be like the same, but marginally less worse, but you wouldn't be dependent on that thing that every day reliably made you feel better.
It's been fascinating watching, folks go through, versions of COVID where they, lose their taste and smell. And obviously, that just sounds like a huge pain in the ass and like kind of scary, like in all aspects.
The thing that scares the shit out of me is the people that like stuff suddenly tastes nasty or smells nasty.
Yeah, we've talked about that before, and obviously that's awful. But like in the like more realm of the mundane, is that how it ruins coffee for you? And so then it like even if you are mostly feeling well, but you lose the taste and smell, it like just completely disrupts your routine because so much of coffee, like other than like the ingredients that are affecting your biology and psychology, is like the smell and like the process of that on your tongue and losing it. Like the most recent one of this was like, you and I, Rob, listened to the Hogan John's Bears podcast, and like one of them got it, and it's like it just ruined coffee. They couldn't drink it for like 3 weeks because not tasting it made it like the whole process irrelevant. And so they switched to tea because at least tea was like a more pleasant mouthfeel during the process, which I thought was like just like a really interesting observation about the habits we fall into with like the various things that we are mildly addicted to, and then the discovery that it is. I think in some ways that I thought of that because it is disconnected from the process you went through, which is like, oh well, it's just like the thing that makes you awake, and if you get away from that, you'll be fine. And it's like, well, no, this person still was drinking it. But no, like they were robbed of like a huge part of the thing that made it pleasurable for them, even if the like keep you awake part was technically still there.
Yeah, I mean, I will say at the end of all that, I drink far less coffee than I did before that. Like when I did that, I was drinking.
That makes sense.
Like, so not like 12
I'm still afraid to
cups
say it because it's still like it's still a shitload, but it's like less of a shitload than before. Like
no,
one shitload instead of two shitloads.
When I sort of throttled it back, I was drinking like probably 70 to 80 ounces of black coffee a day.
Which is what? How many? Like
How big is your mug?
6 or 7 cups of coffee?
So the analogy more like it would be like 4 pint glasses. Right?
That's a lot of coffee.
Yeah, well, so this was all like basically I never throttled back from when I was writing a thesis at like college, and so like there's a period in my life where from morning until pretty late at night I would be drinking coffee, and like I felt immortal, and like I was like, coffee keeps some people up, but not me. I can have coffee until like 9, 10 at night, and then I just sleep like a baby, and that was because of the crushing fatigue that the coffee was just like barely masking. But like once I got away from it, it's like like not getting raging caffeine withdrawal headaches if I haven't had like 40 ounces of coffee by like 11 in the morning. That's nice. I like that. So
that's
like
I
got to a good place.
Yeah.
Was your sleep good then when you tried this coffee experiment? So
Cado, this is actually how I ended up realizing that I might be someone with ADHD, because for years afterwards, so like around this time too, I like finally cut smoking and all this stuff, and for ages I was like, why do I feel like a fraction of the person I was toward the end of college, where like all I did was not eat and drink coffee and smoke about a half pack of unfiltered cigarettes a day. And I was more productive and like put together, and my life was more under control than ever before. And I couldn't figure it out until like at some point, years of like pondering this, were like, man, I guess the only lesson here is don't be healthy and don't try to make good choices. Continue to damage your body so you can be a go-getter. But then it occurred to me that maybe there's something else going on, which was that if you boiled it down, I had been just bombarding myself with the most intense, like uncontrolled stimulants that they just like sell everywhere in America,
right?
Like all the time. And that's basically what ADHD treatment is, right? Like it is, we're going to like hit you with some serious fucking stimulants because that's what you need to like just tune in a little bit. And that's when I was like, oh shit, I think there's a small chance that like all those attention issues and shit might be clinically interesting as opposed to me being a piece of shit, which is what I believe for like 25 years.
Yeah.
When did you all drink coffee for the first time? Because I think like the moment that coffee, I assume for a lot of people it's college, and it was for me too, but it wasn't in the traditional sense of like I needed it to stay up late at night. I did not touch coffee until I met my fucking wife. Like it just had never been a thing. I had soda or whatever, but it was that I was drinking it like purely for the taste as opposed to as like a caffeine bump. And then she's a coffee hound. She's not quite as bad as Rob got back in his rabid days, but like it can be pretty bad at times. And when we first started dating, she came down. I was still in college, and she, like, bless her heart, would like stay Sunday night, get up at the ass of Monday morning to drive 2.5 hours away from my school to make it to, like her like 8 o'clock like work start time. It was incredible. But she obviously needed coffee to do that, and I remember just distinctly being like, "Well, never had it. I'll try it." And then it was just. I was like, oh no, I was blissfully unaware of like what this can do to the human body until this moment. And then the moment it touched my lips, I at first I was just putting as much sugar and like cream as I could into it because I couldn't stand like the bitter taste. And then I've gone a complete opposite direction where I put absolutely nothing in it ever. But I'm curious where the rest of you, when did it come in?
It was probably like 7 or 8. I'm sorry.
Hold on. He's Colombian.
Yeah, I'm come from a Colombian household. What the fuck did you expect?
So how does that work though? Is it like a in the morning, like, hey, here's coffee for everyone? It's like a Christmas treat, like like it's cold out, come in, have some coffee?
No, I mean we lived in
It's
Florida,
more like in Rudolph
so-
the Red-Nosed Reindeer where they bully Rudolph for not conforming until like he puts on a little like nose cone. It's like, Cado, drink your espresso. Drink it, baby.
It's literally just like, obviously my parents were drinking it all the time and it smells really good, and so like you ask, and like what they do instead of being like, no, that's not for kids, it's just like they make you a like, it's mostly milk with like a tablespoon of coffee in there to get a little bit of the taste and sugar in there.
That
It's
sounds
like,
delightful.
It's delicious. It's yeah, exactly. It's like, it's
So actually
baby's
making you
first
more
coffee.
susceptible to
Yeah.
really just loving
Yep.
the shit out of coffee.
What if we made
Started
it candy,
early, yeah.
got you hooked, and then increasingly less milk, less sugar, more coffee?
Yeah. But like it was part of a thing also, like drinking, like learning to drink hot things very early on, because before you start getting coffee, you do get hot chocolate like with like big breakfast meals on the weekend usually. Or even like during the week if there was enough time, but usually there wasn't enough time. But like that was one of the things, like you have to learn how to drink hot things and not burn yourself, and we're starting you at like age 5 on that, because that's just, you have hot drinks with many of your meals. Like there's a big
That's smart.
part of like drinking caldo, I guess it's just like pure broth, as like part of a dish, where it's like you have a mug of broth and you drink it along with like a plate of rice and chicken and potatoes, and it's just like that's part of specifically my family comes from what is called Tierra Fria. It's like cold country basically. It's up in the mountains in Colombia, so there's a lot of like, you're drinking hot things a lot. So as part of that, very early into coffee, and just like kind of never did the whole like, because I developed a taste for it early on. It was always like, I think that would taste good right now, and less about the caffeine like effect on me, which I also had this idea that coffee did not affect me, but I don't. I don't. It was mostly that I just didn't take into account that going to sleep at 2 wasn't on purpose. Like, it was just like, no, that's just naturally when I would go to sleep anyways, right? No, it's because I had coffee at 4, and therefore I'm going to stay up forever. But it felt natural. I didn't feel jittery, right? I never get the jitters with caffeine, so I don't understand it as like, that's why I'm still awake. It's just like, I'm still awake. I feel fine. I'm still awake.
Yeah, I think I'd had coffee like occasionally, like begging for, sort of like Cado, getting a little bit of coffee with some milk in it when I was a little kid, but it didn't like, I didn't enjoy it as much, so I didn't really get into it. But then in high school, I would never have to explain like what I was up to or what I was doing. If the answer is basically I was hanging out in a diner until like 1 a.m. with my friends drinking coffee. And so that is kind of what a lot of us did, which was that, you know, we would, we sure as shit weren't doing homework. So we would sort of like, go around and collect a critical mass of people. And then we would go like encamp at a diner for all hours. And like the only thing they'll give you there that's free is water and coffee. So we would just order the endless coffee and basically keep that coming. And it was shitty diner coffee, but like it was also, you know, I have a lot of nostalgia for like shitty diner coffee for this reason, right?
It was freely available diner coffee.
And then in college, it started turning into more of a productivity aid, and enough to get me through various projects. And at that point, I was off to the races. And the other reason why I had to cut consumption back a number of years back was we just moved out here, and the cost of living was so much higher that it was like, to sustain my current levels of coffee consumption, we were down to 8 o'clock coffee. Big bags of 8 o'clock coffee. Now, I'm a man, not an animal. So I was like, I can't drink this.
He says as he looks in my direction.
But with the aid of our friends at Cafe Bustelo, that terrible cup of 8 o'clock coffee could turn into a pretty passable French roast. And so this is what I was doing, was I was sort of like mixing together the Cafe Bustelo vacuum packed like ground espresso mix into my like flavorless sawdust 8 o'clock coffee beans. And then eventually I was like, I could just drink less coffee, and maybe then I could buy real coffee and life would be good. And it was better. So, I think we got there eventually. I think the people who were like, life's better without coffee, they were lying. But life's better with coffee as like, a daily ritual.
Moderation is key to everything.
Yeah.
That part is true.
And just by the way, you brought up the rituals of things, Patrick. The other day I was like on Instagram, and I was served up an ad that was like, finally, a coffee grinder that's silent, so you don't wake up the house grinding your morning coffee. And I was like, that's the point, you assholes. Oh, finally, we found a way to brew coffee without generating any delicious roasty smells wafting through the house, summoning the family to the kitchen at last. So yeah, I'm all in for the ritual.
Do you have your household gets up at the same time situation? Because that's the thing. Like, I feel like
they get up when Rob's coffee grinder starts.
Yep.
So
I think we learned something about how Rob's desperately, it's 7 a.m. He wants the coffee, but his partner's asleep, and then his hands begin to shake as he grabs the grinder.
Here's the thing. I am the final alarm clock because MK will just sleep. And so I make sure she is out of bed by such and such a time. So like at a certain point, like the volume of everything down here slowly comes up. But the first alarm clock is Mina. Mina wakes up around like 5:30 in the morning and maneuvers herself to like position her face like a foot away from yours and just stares at you, willing you to wake up from like 5:30 to 6:30. And then the minute you begin to stir, she like jumps up and down in triumph because she did it. And then she slaps you in the chest, and then like it's really intense, and then you shower, and then I start my day around like 7:30. And then I like the summoning rituals involve coffee, sending Mina up on a wake up expedition. So that's how things work here. But yeah, we don't have a synchronized wake up time.
Rob's like summoning Cthulhu as part of his process to get his partner to wake up.
Mina, would you like to awaken the Great One?
We all, ours is it's similar. The dog sleeps, but the baby, she wakes up around 6:30, 6:45. So it's like whenever you hear crying because she hasn't learned that she can get out of her bed, although she doesn't know how doors work yet. So all that'll come with time. And eventually then babies do the exact same thing. They come up to your bed and they stare at you in the face. I mean, that's what Jessica did to me last night. She woke up, went to the bathroom, got spooked about something in her room, and she's like, "Can you come sleep with me?" Which is me just sleeping. We built her a bunk bed for her most recent birthday because she talked about that for the longest time. It's like, I want my sister to sleep in the bunk bed. And I was like, well, I don't know if you're going to like your sister at the point that, that becomes a possibility. You're going to be, like 8 or 9, she'll be 3. I was like, I don't know if you're going to want to do that, but like, sure, if like bunk beds are cool, it saves us some space in your room. And then with like her like fancy mattress was supposed to go in wherever she slept, which we thought would be the above bunk. It's cool to be up there, right? Absolutely not. Like, we built it and she was like, that's scary and that's next to the fan. And I was like, okay. But whenever I have to go in there because she's spooked or something like that, I try to not sleep with her. And I was like, I'll be in the room and like, I'll go up and I'll sleep on the top bunk. And so I left her fancy mattress up there and gave her the shit mattress. Because like, if I'm going to be in here once a week, my back's going to feel better. You don't need this. Like, your back's not going to be crooked if you have the crummy mattress. But kids do the same thing. They stare at you in the face until you wake up and go, what do you need?
I'm convinced that like, there's no way small children and dogs don't like on some instinctive level like believe in magical thinking, right? Like that, because you don't have agency. All you can do is like stare at shit and hope it happens. And eventually it probably will, because what you know to hope for is like routine, right? It's like, I sure hope this thing I want that always happens a little bit sooner. I will stare at this thing to make it happen. And eventually it will. And every time like Mina has this look of like, I pulled it off. I did it again. It's like, it just cracks me up.
Cats, however, believe in action. My cat likes to come up and nibble on my leg and be like, hey, I haven't been fed yet. I'm like, you still have 30 minutes till feeding time. Get off of me.
Well, that's why some people will get for their kids. We haven't had to do that because our kids weren't super obnoxious about waking up. But like, if you have kids that like routinely wake up at like 4:30 in the morning or something like that, and they cannot get themselves back to bed, it's like, people will get like these red light, green lights to like go in their room, and they're programmable. So it's like, hey, if you wake up and it's a red light, you are not allowed, you cannot enter the parental room. Like,
do not.
You can do whatever you want in this room. You can go get your cereal. Like, there'll be like tasks that are assigned to the kids that they can do, but until you see that green light, you are not allowed to go into to wake the parents, which I think is unfortunately we haven't had to do that. They just sleep normally, but like, sometimes there are. I'm not sure if that would work for Mina though.
I would love that though. That sounds great. I would hang like submarine condition lights in the corner. Sorry, the general quarters red light is lit. You can't until we stand down for the morning. You can't come in here. It's sleeping hours. So Patrick.
Yeah.
Before we get into, speaking of things that we have been conditioned to expect and want and hope for, I think we'll be talking a little bit like what we're excited for this year. But you've also been playing some new stuff, right?
Yeah, I've been playing a couple of different things. One of them came out just before the holidays. I'm kind of picking at it on my Switch, although I think it's on PC as well. Filmechanism, I think that's Filmecha. Filmechanism. It's a 2D kind of like puzzle platformer game in which the gimmick, the hook, is that you can take a screenshot, like a snapshot in time of how the level looks at that moment, and then you can revert it to that state. Using various power-ups. So like there are these little kind of like film canisters that you find, and every time you get one of those, that allows you to take a snapshot of the level and then revert it back. And it's not hard to imagine how you might use that to shift platforms around and various other things you would find in your sort of traditional platformer. And I don't have a ton to say about the game other than it's like super delightful. I find it has this really smart, we were talking about what was that puzzle game where you shift the box around. I have it on my phone. Hold on.
Shift the box?
Yeah, we talked Moncage, which I should point out.
Moncage.
Talked about, I think, that before the holidays, and I was like, man, I really wish that game was on like a phone or a tablet, and like someone DM me, it's like, it is. And I was like, oh, cool. So I since downloaded it on my iPad, I need to catch up on where I'm at on the PC. But I praised that game for having a really intuitive, naturalistic hint system, which I think is really difficult to nail in puzzle games. And Filmechanism doesn't have like a hint system necessarily, but it has like these trees that you can choose from of like a Oh, I wish they're labeled very funny. I don't have it in front of me, but it's not just easy, medium, hard. Like they're labeled much funnier than that. But it's the equivalent. It's like, hey, here's an easy track of puzzles, here's a medium track of puzzles, and then here's like a nightmare track of puzzles. And it's a really interesting way of framing a puzzle game, because it's like, look, how are you responding to these mechanics? Like, what level of difficulty are you looking for? And rather than scaling difficulty in the traditional sense, which is that like, hey, you'll start at one point, get to another point, and it's going to be sort of like a hill that you're climbing. What I found sticking to the easy section is that it just stays easy. It stays where like the very obvious thing you should do to solve the puzzle, you know what? That is the solution. Congrats. Like, you nailed it. And so it introduces different mechanics, like different way that like you're manipulating the environment, but the difficulty isn't scaling in the way that it normally does, or your expectation normally is in a video game. It is just like, does it give you brain pleasure to solve this in this sort of way at this sort of like pushback from the game designer? And I'm like, yeah, yes, it does. Cool. Would you just like 100 of those instead of actually being like, damn, like we need to challenge you to the moon and make sure you're applying everything that you've learned over the last 6 hours? Like, no, the game doesn't work that way. So I'm working my way through the easy ones, and my guess is medium will probably be like the nice like middle ground, and that the nightmare level will be like beyond my comprehension or a way of enjoying the game. But I just thought it was like a really fascinating way of presenting this style of game. I want to go back to figure out like, are they just harder versions of existing levels, or is it a different set of puzzles that you're engaging with? But it's just kind of baffling to play a game in which the difficulty is flat, because that is just not really how games of challenge or puzzle are presented. And I found it to be like a really delightful surprise.
It's also a lot of extra work, right? Like, instead of making one flat difficulty curve, having to make quote unquote the same puzzle but harder, in, you know, that's just like so much more content.
Well, that's why I should double check to see if the levels are different, because then it could just be a situation where I think here it says they made 200 levels, and it's like, okay, well, you sort them and then you try and like flatten the difficulty according to, you know, the metric that the player is looking for. But that's just not usually like flat. Usually there are kind of curves up and down, and some of them are like, it took me a little bit longer than others, but like it is just always like, I didn't really pick up on this until about like hour or two, where I was like, you know what? Like when I walk in the room and I go and I guess what the solution is, it's always that. I'm so smart. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Like the game, when it said easy, it was like, I'm easy, baby. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I just have the Bulls on. I'm watching them slowly lose to the Nets after tying at 71-71 at a crucial part in the third quarter. And then they completely fucking blew it. And that was a bummer. Let me just solve these easy puzzles so I can feel good about that, instead of watching my team just melt down on national TV for a quarter and a half. That's where I was at last night. Rob, you should be watching the Bulls.
So they're like almost never on in my market is the frustrating thing. Like, you're getting all these games because you're in the Chicago market. I'm like, what are they showing tonight? And it's like, oh, it's the Lakers and the Nuggets. And like, you know, fine, but also no, I'm not, I got other stuff to do.
Rob, I mean, okay. Like,
as we all know, there's no way to watch games.
No way you can solve that issue.
The internet?
I should buy the NBA League Pass thing. That's exactly what you're advocating.
You should buy the NBA League Pass thing. Like, you should do that.
If only there were a friend, or maybe a friend I haven't met yet, who had League Pass, who was like sharing it for kudos and props, and like just to be a good corporate citizen. So, Patrick, I feel like the game with flat difficulty curve discourse is real similar to our realizing things are hitting different as we age discussion too, where it's like, you know what? What if, you know, those really easy early puzzles that puzzle games give you? what if they made the whole game out of those like high five, like, hey bro, good job.
You understand the basic mechanics. Would you like to just do that again? Absolutely. Like, sign me up for 6 hours of that.
And what's the other one you've been playing?
The other one, this was recommended to me on Twitter. I will during the break, I will dig up who sent it to me because they noted it specifically for me because one of the games I liked a lot last year was a game called Electhead, which was this like electricity sort of based platformer where you're controlling a little dude who could like manipulate electricity in different ways to solve puzzles. And they had pointed out to me that Below the Ocean was a game that kind of reminded them of that, and I can definitely echo that. Below the Ocean is a game. It's I think it's only on Steam at the moment, but it is it only took me an hour to finish, which is awesome. Like rare to find a game that is like incredibly satisfying, that also is sort of like in and out, but also it manages to have the thing I like the most in like modern Mario games from Nintendo, which is that, man, we got like 600 ideas. Should have saved them. We didn't. Shit. Like, all 600 of them are here. Like, do you want to play with one for 30 seconds? Great. So in Below the Ocean, you are some legendary, family. I don't know. You're some legendary explorer. Like you're diving down to the ocean, and the kind of conceit here is that you are traveling from like oxygen tank to oxygen tank. And every time that you do that, you're attaching sort of like your, I don't know what you would call it, like not rope, but like what are the
tube?
Thing? Your tube,
like air tube,
air tube, like that, yeah, like
it's been
that
so long since I did bell diving, I couldn't tell you.
Like the little thing that like is hanging behind, like a deep sea diver, and like that is something that you can then, it becomes sort of like a physics manipulation. So like you can jump around the environment, you can use that to like wrap around objects, and then suddenly you can like swing yourself and you have momentum. And the delightful thing about Below the Ocean is like it takes that like very basic conceit and then just throws a billion other ideas at that, where you're like wrapping it around in order to like charge up like a version of an attack. You're using that to like throw yourself into different sort of like speed boosts. It's like it's like there's like a million ideas. Like it's similar to Filmechanism. It is a like pretty basic game, but like if you like me like little smart puzzle platformers, it comes highly recommended. I mean, it's funny because the description here says, dive deep below the ocean, haha, in search of legendary treasures while using your oxygen lifeline to swing past obstacles. Run, jump, swing, bubble jump, bungee, slingshot, puzzle solve, platform, treasure hunt, which is indicative of like what you do here as well. It is a game that is just like, it is split into chapters that you can play, like 4 chapters in any order. And every time you start, it shows you the controller layout, which is like jump, move. That's the game. Like, have fun, which is both true and also incredibly deceptive, because it's almost there to sort of like poke fun at the fact that like, hey, whatever you learned last time is going to have like very little application to what you're doing going forward. Like, yep, you're this little dude. You've got a rope behind you. But we're like not going to use any of the stuff that you did before, and like brand new mechanics are going to be applied as you enter this section. And there's kind of a theming to each of the different chapters, but it's just a really smart game with a ton of smart ideas. And I'm always appreciative of games that not, I don't know, throw this in like a game that like respects my time, because I feel like that usually applies to like big bloated games that like don't know where to stop. But it's cool to play a game that like is willing to throw this many ideas in this short amount of time. So shout outs to, it's not even a studio, it's just Ismael Rodriguez, just a person seems to have made this. So shout outs to them, and shout outs to Below the Ocean. It's a really, really cool game. Tether, that's the word we were looking for.
Tether.
I wasn't ever going to get there from what you were saying.
No.
Like it just, I was hung up on the breathing tube thing, right? Where I was like, no, it's got to be a way to like pass the air through.
Well, I like this. That I just posted a screenshot of your little dude.
Oh, just a little guy.
Just a little guy.
Little O2 tank. Perfect. Patrick. I have figured out why I never got
all
with the
great
original
Rob
Halo
stories
so
start
far.
with all great Rob stories with I have figured out, and then cut to 40 minutes later. Sorry, what was this? You how to play Halo? Is that what you said? Well, before I cut
How to
you off?
play Halo? Yes, or
Okay.
more
Well,
accurately,
we're Waypoint getting into guides. And the first one we're putting out is Rob's guide to how to play Halo. So Rob, for the SEO munchers out there, how do we play Halo? How to play Halo?
An oral history of how to play Halo.
well, first of all, you abandon pride and shame, and you play on a difficulty level that, like, the flavor text from Bungie might suggest that you shouldn't be proud or feeling confident for playing
This
the
is
game.
not the way to like.
Wow.
So heroic, it says this is the way to play Halo. On Rookie or whatever it is, like it doesn't say this is not the way to play Halo.
It's basically like, yeah, you could, I'm sure, beat the game, but it will be a hollow, joyless experience. And I'm like,
Pew pew, my friend.
maybe for you. No, I think so. I'm continuing to play a little bit of Halo, but no, the thing that hit me is I hit the point where I've always fallen off the game, and I figured out exactly where it is.
Okay.
Where
The
you
flood.
go to rescue, where you go to rescue Captain Keyes near the start of the game. You go into the fucking Covenant ship, and it's just a corridor shooter. It is the most corridor-ass corridor shooter like ever, and you are running through like hallway after hallway. They all look identical. Very little sense of navigating the level because it's all such a blur, and then you finally get to them, and it turns you around. It's like, now it's time to escape with Captain Keyes. And reliably, at that point, I've been like, maybe later, and I just never come back. Because I am not, I'm like, I've spent all the time in this fucking Covenant ship that I'm going to spend. But this time, because I am getting good and like have been sort of putting some thought into how to be good at Halo, this time I like just fought my way out of there, and now
If AI are secret people that we don't understand quite yet, your Captain Keyes has just been screaming like, "Oh, this time Rob's coming to get me! No, I got some coffee grounds to make. Bonk, uninstall."
Just always, I'm like, nope, not sorry. We're not getting out of here. This is boring. I'm done with this level. But this time, like, I'm cruising along. I'm enjoying the flow, but also I'm really excited about. We're on the trail of something called the Silent Cartographer.
Oh, so that was my question. It's been so long. So you've never even made it to the Silent Cartographer stage, like the Halo stage, like the thing people talk about, think about, in which Halo Infinite is built around. You've never made it to the Silent Cartographer.
This is why I had to go back. See,
Wow.
I timed it.
Finish
I
the
knew all the questions would not be answered until Halo Infinite, and so now we're going to answer them all at once in one go, across just one game after another. But yeah, no. So I've been continuing to chip away at that, and I'm starting to be a bit more charmed. I think it's come all the way around to like when I first played Halo ages ago on Xbox. I was one, like, kind of a diehard PC partisan at that point, and two, because I was such like a PC shooter guy, it didn't feel like a lot of stuff I liked playing.
Not
You know what
going
I
to
mean?
play this Max shooter.
Yeah. feels floaty.
Myth? Ugh, that's not a real strategy game.
Oh, Myth is one of the greatest games ever.
Well, is it Myth 2 specifically is the one that people really like, right? Or maybe you're a Myth 1 stan.
No, so they came out within like 9 months of each other.
Yeah, I guess the sequels back then
effectively the same
were,
game.
yeah.
Yeah. They're
I just
both
remember, I've never
amazing.
played Myth. I just know that like the blood and like dismemberment was infamous in those games.
Oh yeah, no, like I genuinely like. I would still say Myth is the most interesting game Bungie ever made, like by far, because it's singular. Like there is no other game like Myth.
Well, Halo started as a strategy game, right? Like it was an extension of Myth before it became a shooter.
Oh,
So
boy.
Halo
Was
Wars
it?
is the actual, this is what they always meant to make.
No, because remember that was Ensemble, so that was just Microsoft trying to do something with the Age of Empires devs.
I mean, maybe
Yeah. Bungie conceived it as a real-time strategy game, which players would yada yada yada. And it became an FPS when Microsoft acquired Bungie. Fascinating. Yeah, because I mean, it would make sense. Why would Bungie? I mean, I guess they made Marathon, but like back when they were being on on stage with Steve Jobs, to show off. Well, that was the first time Halo was shown, I guess. So,
yeah, no, but like. Myth is still really amazing. I think you can see some of the DNA. There's little ghouls in Myth that are basically the little the tiny little dudes in Halo.
Grunts.
Yeah, like the ghouls and the grunts are basically the same thing, right down to their attack pattern. Like ghouls' whole thing was to be really fast and really like kitey, and they would just run up to you and throw something explosive into the middle of your formation. And so like you had like they weren't that dangerous, except if they got close, they would like fuck you up. And that is absolutely like what the grunt pattern is. But yeah, continuing to chip away at that, and like a schmuck, also ended up stumbling back into the original Need for Speed Shift because I was about to uninstall it, and I was like,
"That's not." How do you make that leap?
Classic mistake.
I was gonna uninstall it, and then I was like, "Where did I leave off, though?" And the answer was like surprisingly far along. And so I like was given that a little run last night, and once again enjoying like Slightly Mad's take on what the car handling dynamics were. I spent a good hour, so I did something kind of. It's not my fault. It's their fault. I'm sorry. This is now 11-year-old video games beef. So. They're like in a lot of racing games, there are car battles in this game where it's like, you know, Lancer versus Golf type things, right? So it's like similarly classed cars pitted against one another. And last night, one of the events at my tier was, it was like a Koenigsegg CCX versus a Lamborghini Aventador, I want to say. Not super important, except the thing is, I was like, the Lamborghini looks cooler, and I will race it, and I will win this event. And I was just getting worked. It was the type of event where if the other driver pulls out a 5-second lead, the race just ends immediately. And so you like miss one corner, and they just drive away. You're done. And it's best 2 out of 3 until somebody like, you know, wins 2 of the races that way. And I must have spent like an hour trying to do this in the Lamborghini. And I was like, I'm just getting my ass kicked. I suck at this. This car, like, I can't do it. Even as I'm learning the track a little bit better, I'm still not making progress. And I was like, let's just see what happens. It feels like it's unfair. It feels like that car can just do things that mine can't. I'm gonna try it. So I switched cars after an hour of failing to do this thing in Lamborghini, and discovered that the issue with that little head-to-head match is that the Koenigsegg was just a much better car. I was just like, it's like, I can't believe that. I guess this is one of the things about like maybe why licensing deals end up weird. If you're Lamborghini, your car is in this game just as a big piece of shit. Like this whole challenge is like, man, here are 2 similar cars. One of them is basically a shopping cart with like a giant jet engine in the back, and the other is a sports car. And so like once I tried the other car, and I was like, oh, like it corners, it brakes, it doesn't like spin out when I put on the gas. Easily cleared it, and really wish I had that hour back where I was like, it's probably my fault. I've just not mastered the Lamborghini. When the truth was, Lamborghini just kind of sucked. Which I should have known, because they always kind of do.
Wow.
It's only so many things you can do with a big wedge, aerodynamically speaking.
Damn. Lambo heads are going to be coming up in our emails. Mad.
Yeah, bring it. There's one thing I know. I am sure the Waypoint audience is just wall to wall Lamborghini fans. Just like, well, you wouldn't say that shit about Murcielago.
I'm sure that's
Cado, you been playing anything?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it High Fleet?
A little bit of that. I was gonna say I've been playing Valorant because a new season started. And I was actually I wanted to yell about the fucking competitive queue in that game because I think it sucks a little bit. It's
I mean, that's the nature of a competitive queue, right?
Yeah. Well, specifically one thing that they do whenever they have these kind of like structural seasons where there's 3 acts in an episode. Episodes are the big like 1.0 jump in like patch notes usually too. So we just started episode 4, act 1. There was a big competitive reset where basically every time a new act rolls over, you have to do placement matches to get back into the competitive queue and see what your rank is. Apparently this time around, the jump feels bigger than it's been in any of the previous resets that they've done, to a point where like people who are at the very top are somewhere in the middle of the entire range. And it feels like it has to do mostly with just the perception of people streaming this, doing that ladder climb, and that needing to not be over as quickly in order for people to keep playing Valorant on stream. That's kind of an assumption that I'm making here, but like it just feels like it's such a big gap this time that people like me who are in lower ranks, like I don't have enough time to do climb, even if technically like I play with a bunch of people who play a lot more and are in gold and stuff, and when we play together and they like level our MMR, I'm like fine to like play with them. If I like wanted to spend that much time playing Valorant, I probably could get into a higher rank, but I'm pretty low and like it's gonna drop me into like the bottom ranks. And the climb, it's like it doesn't make me want to continue the climb. Like the like they want the climb to reset too quickly. I feel like for an like a regular person, it feels very much tuned to someone who's going to play only this game and probably stream it, and that's why it's like that's why it's like tuned to be so many matches. And part of this
the fate of like any game.
Well, no,
like this after 2 years.
Here's the
is that who's still here? Well, the people like the most highly engaged people.
Yeah, but like I do think there's a balancing act here that I feel like they're tuning a little too far. Because here's the thing, I'm also playing
feel like
Pokemon.
It's been tuned around the entertainment product of people being like, "Come climb with me for like 6 hours." Right,
in a day, and like then they'll eventually get back up to their rank of like the max ranks or whatever. But it's gonna take. But
once they do that,
long
they
time.
might go stream something else too.
Right, and then they have a secondary. Here's the thing: in the top rank, it becomes a ladder, like just where individuals are ranked with a number. Like if you're in a Radiant rank, everyone gets a Radiant number, and then you have to climb. You can still climb that and like vie for points there. But it feels like, if you have that seems like it should be enough for the streamers anyways to be fighting over those ladder placements, where everyone else who's playing rank and trying to kind of either improve their rank through like practicing and getting better at the game and having fun with their friends, it feels like it's going to be just like a much kind of grindier climb to get back to the place you were before, even not even like advanced. At
the highest rank too, wouldn't it be like I think one issue I've seen crop up like at that point is you don't want your top influencers and like streamers in the community also just like nonstop cannibalizing each other all the time.
True.
Which it seems to have been an issue. Like when if you dump them all on a ladder and they're all matching against each other, it can start feeling pretty airless. Like everyone prefers to make progress, right?
Right. Right.
So it makes total sense that they'd be like, hey, these people like looking like gods at this game by streaming themselves climbing the MMR, right?
Right.
They don't like people seeing them lose the sweatiest matches possible against like where they're all great players, but like once you're in that, like there's some people who are like pro great, and then there's some who are just like top 1% of like all players great, and like that distance is actually pretty huge.
Yeah. I play another game with a ranked ladder that works kind of similarly, Pokemon Unite, which has also resets. The difference being the space between
the difference
ranks
being that you're just a god at Pokemon Unite.
No, I mean
you.
It's about like time availability and investment, right? It's the matches are shorter, right? The whole endeavor is a shorter kind of product, and the climb, therefore, even though I was dropped like 2 ranks from when I'm in Masters in the top rank, and I dropped down 3 ranks when they reset things. But that climb doesn't take many matches. Like you only need to win like 15 matches to get up to the next rank. Where in Valorant, if you math it out, you can get there in as short as like 5 matches, but those 5 matches are like 45 minutes minimum, right? And so like time investment wise, it's going to take longer to climb those ranks no matter what. And they're adding more space to that gap from where you were to where you are now when the reset happens. And that kind of just took the sales out of me wanting to do the grind. It's like, I don't play enough of it. I play pretty regularly. I play like probably 3 or 4 matches a week, like most weeknights. I play at least a match. And even doing that, playing in the competitive queue, like I like raised like 1 rank over the last like 3 months. And I was like, great, this next one that's coming up, I'm going to like really focus on competitive, because they made a change also. And this kind of has helped this issue where there is no, if you're with 5 people, there aren't limits to who you can rank with anymore. There used to be like you had to be within 3 sub rank. Like there's like if you're in gold, you can be with people in gold 3, which is right before it jumps up to platinum, or people in silver. There was a small, so it was like a range, but it was pretty small. Now they made it anyone of any rank, as long as you're 5 people together, can rank together, and you'll just get, based on the disparity, you'll get less movement in that grind. You'll get less like rank points basically in that grind if you're like playing with someone who's like 4 or 5 ranks above you. And it's like, great, now I can play with people who have put in the time to grind a lot, but then my grind becomes longer still because I'm getting less points to put in it. But that is sometimes the only way to actually make any progress, because it's a team-based game, right?
Right.
And when you have this disparity of like, which is like average, like not everyone you play with can invest the same amount of time all the time, and so it's just like it feels like the gap has become too wide at this point between resets, where I'm kind of soured on the whole climbing thing. Where before, like literally, as this new rank reset was coming up, I was like, you know what, this time I'm gonna really stick to competitive queue and like start making those MMR gains. And then I saw the disparity of everyone dropping, and I was like, wow, I'm gonna end up at the very bottom, and that is a hard place to climb up from to where I was, and then even harder to get past that point, right? So yeah,
that's
mixed feelings.
Look, social
about
mobility is a myth.
Have you thought about streaming for like a bunch of hours?
Yeah, just like playing it as a job, like 8 hours. Yeah, sorry, Waypoint Plus.
People do that all the time.
I'm gonna go.
Hey, thanks Waypoint Plus for making Cado's MMR ascent possible.
Yeah.
MMR, isn't that what they put in the COVID vaccines?
God damn it. But yeah, that's been my Valorant. Also, there's a new agent in there. She's cool. She runs around. I have to played her very
wow,
much. But
just
she seems
completely
neat.
turning the game on its head. A
Well,
new
no,
agent
well,
runs
here's the thing.
around.
No,
2
wait,
years
actually-
in, Valorant
actually-
has changed the game. This one,
If you think about the way that CS is built, right? The Counter-Strike style tactical shooter, running and making noise is usually, not great. You use it very sparingly because otherwise you give away your position. She obviously still makes noise, but it's like an ability, and she can run faster than any other character. Like suddenly there's a potential for someone to be in a place you wouldn't expect them to be because they can get there quicker. It's gonna be interesting seeing that character in a place where most people are watching corners, expecting like a slow peek or like a quick peek, and like. Instead, she can like run and slide out of corners in a way that nobody else can like take advantage of, gaining information that way, So it'll be interesting to see what that does, especially at the competitive level. And I need to play more with her, but it's fun. Seems fun.
Well, that is the hell of like competitive games.
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, we've really tuned this thing to be like kind of a full part-time job of of a thing that you're going to do. So like, those other hobbies you have and other interests, what if you didn't?
Yeah.
Right. What was that like really dystopian quote from like a Netflix exec where it's like, we view our competitors as like sleep and reading?
yeah.
That's kind of like competitive game design in some ways too, where it's like, really, who says that you should not be fulfilled by playing like this all the time forever?
Yeah. It just particularly stings having an example of something that kind of, here's that phrase again, respects my time, as Pokemon Unite does, where like through skill and like minimal amount of like grinding, I can get up to like the rank that matches my skill level, in a way that like doesn't feel like even when the resets happen, I'm losing all that like investments, Would
you feel better if you were getting a real investment, like
Jesus
Valcoin,
fucking Christ,
as you were going through
God
the ladder?
No.
What if you got a little like kill token that was yours and was indeed not fungible?
God fucking Christ. Oh, but then I could sell it to someone, and then
Well,
Well, I don't know. I just put up. I mean, in theory, I just put up an article on the site about called "We Tracked Down the People Who Were Actually Buying Ubisoft's NFTs," in which I've spent the last during my lunch breaks and like just little free time, like digging through like the 2 websites that Ubisoft partnered with to release a bunch of Ghost Recon Breakpoint NFTs. It's very difficult to find. Like lots of people have like essentially like pseudo anonymous accounts where it's like it's just a string of numbers and there's just no way to know who that person is. And then I'm just desperately watching the activity. You can see like the activity feeds to be like, this was liked, this was listed, this was bought, this was sold, and then finding someone who like has an identifiable online handle that I can then like connect to something on the broader internet. I found a handful of people, and like the long and short of the article was just like a bunch of like, so the way these NFTs worked was, and I didn't realize this at the start, was that Ubisoft wasn't selling them. They just put a bunch up for grabs and then you could claim them. And so it was basically like a free land grab for like 2,400 NFTs for Breakpoint. And then the people that claim those can then go and do what they want with them. Like, for example, one person mostly plays offline, and so they're unique. What is it? The M4A1 Tactical number 236. They're mostly playing in a offline single player mode. Just the weirdest shit, but they sold it for $20.
Hoping that an AI will notice.
Yeah.
Just hoping that some guy you wipe out will be like, hey, couldn't help but notice the serial number emblazoned on that receiver.
Well, they're not even unique. That's the thing. Like, if you contrast that to like the like thriving Counter-Strike marketplace of cosmetics, like when, it's part of the reason that like when you'll see like downloadable like purchases for cosmetic items. The reason they look outlandish is so that when you get into a game, you fucking remember the obnoxious zebra pattern that was on the AK, because like that's the point. And here it's like, who the hell is going to notice the number? And it turns out nobody I talked to could tell me that at any point during their experience online was there any indication that anyone had any idea.
No, I mean, it returns this problem of like the best like use case for NFTs in games are like, well, it's a cosmetic. It's a special type of cosmetic, but still ultimately it's like, but we have those. It's like, yes, but what if it came with all this other bullshit associated with it? Or
if you could sell your cosmetics? No one's ever done that before.
So then the other, but then the other thing is like, okay, so via this system, everyone will be able to have like their cool like signature item. And it's like, no, because there's not enough like variations you can do on these patterns and templates to generate like limitlessly cool, distinctive, unique, like signature looks. And so you're going to end up with like, it's going to be the same thing as like with loot in any RPG, right? Where like a lot of shit does end up looking interchangeable. It doesn't matter if it's like somehow unique in terms of like, well, you know, the color code on this shade of red is like two digits off.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I would push back on that in the sense that like the Dota, like the hat market and like there is a way to like to differentiate that enough that it thrives as a like personalized marketplace for like that community. So I think that's possible. I think it's just true that that's hard. Like there's a reason that like it's really only really only going on at a bunch of Valve games. Now granted they have their own marketplace and economy they can manipulate, but this is also just like also a bad version of even attempting it. Like the like one of the only distinctive ones I think was like the helmet that you can only acquire if you put in 600 hours into Breakpoint, which I think someone has and then acquired. But I don't know that that's been passed off.
Well, but like there has to be like enough organic interest to support people being like, I want to bid on this thing.
Right.
At which point you're back to, well, some people will be able to get cool, unique items. Some folks, if only there was some sort of word for people who are willing to buy really expensive garbage. You know what I mean? It's like, what if players could exploit the whales in their own communities directly? But that's not going to happen because the people who want to exploit the whales are the people making the game. And that's the only, like, I feel like that's, you know, what game NFTs would be aimed at, right? Is like, so how can we squeeze more money out of these people with a lot of money and puzzling motivations? Or maybe
what if we just take the cosmetics we've already built through our worldwide asset pipeline, we throw a number on it, we waste some electricity, we take the world one step closer to doom, but you know what? That trust fund kid, he'll buy it and we'll skim a little off the top. You know, like it's not hard to see the motivation from there.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick break here and then we'll be back to discuss the bright future. And we're back to discuss the games we're looking forward to in 2022.
Should we like put a giant asterisk there that is like the games that I'm looking forward to in 2022 contingent upon their release in 2022?
Yeah.
See Stalker 2 supposed to come out in March 2022 to which we have not seen any meaningful gameplay, which made me very skeptical that it was coming out. And then you know what? Props to them for not even doing the song and dance that frequently happens, which is, hey, we're going to push it back 3 or 4 months. And then 3 or 4 months from now, it's like, hey, we're going to push it back 3 or 4 months. They just said, you know what? It's January. We're coming out in December, which gives them plenty of time to push it back to March 2023, which I think is probably closer to the actual release date of Stalker 2.
Do we think this was all a typo? Someone hit 2 instead of 3.
And then they've just been sitting on it for a long time. Like, granted, Stalker games have a long history of coming out in a broken, busted, and delayed form. So this just, COVID aside, this just continues a long tradition.
Well, and also maybe like stepping back from the metaverse totally fucked up. Maybe they're like, man, people are gonna love the metaverse so much. I'm so glad we integrated the entire metaverse idea just like inseparably into the game design.
It was, it was incredible to have that NFT conversation.
12 hours.
I mean, for people that missed it, like is it still Game World? Is that still a developer? Like
GSC Game World, right?
GSC Game World.
So.
Okay. So anyway, they announced
not that means anything. That's just like
sure,
that.
Yes, correct. Yeah. They announced that they were incorporating NFTs into Stalker 2. I forget exactly what the proposed implementation was. It seemed pretty boring and innocuous, but
it did.
It still sounded extremely stupid. And there was a huge backlash against it, prompting them to not double down at the moment, but then to later very quickly double down and be like, we've heard your feedback, yada, yada, yada. Like, and it was like a bad notes app, like setup, but without an apology. Like it starts as though it's the discussion started as though it was going to be an apology and then ends with, and we're still doing that shit. And then the backlash was even more severe to that. And I think maybe 20 minutes later, they're like, all right, fine. We're not doing any of it. Like it's all gone, but also we're going to delay the game by 7 months, fuckers. Cause that's it. Like, it's going to take that long to take the NFTs out. At least they got, I feel like that's going to be a cycle we see a lot this year is NFT announced backlash after careful consideration of the community. We've chosen to not go down this path.
Well, you're also racing against the fact that like so many NFTs like schemes already are starting to run into the problem of like, wow, this stuff is really easy to boost. Like this sort of like open-ended like ownership concept makes it also an ideal environment for electronic theft. And
well, yeah, because you frequently see like I touched on this in the piece I wrote about Ghost Recon. I was like, I get all sorts of NFT pitches it's predominantly probably what I get in the morning. Like you'll see that like pre-scheduled emails will go out at like hour marks of between 6 and 9 a.m. in the morning. And the vast majority of the glut that I get in that period is some NFT this, some NFT that. And if it's related to this new blockchain game, it is always, here's the money we raised, here's the token we're doing. And then you have to spend like 6 clicks to figure out like what shockwave game they've developed to like claim that they're making a game, and that's if you're lucky. And shout outs to Shockwave and Flash developers. I don't mean that to be derogatory. But people know what I mean when I say that. Or there's nothing at all, right? Like there was this in the Ghost Recon piece. One of the people I found that owned one of the Ghost Recon NFTs turned out to be somebody that is developing an NFT project that has a game associated with it. And I went to their website that is ostensibly about the game and read it 3 times and went, I know, I see tokens, I see explanation of NFT drops, I see a Discord I can get into, and it's really detailed. It's a really beautiful looking webpage. I was like, what's the game? And so I parsed that. I was like, I think they're describing a card game. I think. And so I emailed the person like who's spearheading that, and we had done a previous exchange where I mentioned, one of the common criticisms I have of these pitches that make them seem like shitty pyramid scheme is like every pitch I get emphasizes the money, and frequently it's a bullet point of like in phase 3 of the project you'll get to see the game, but like phase 3 is like 12 months from now. And he answered and like totally acknowledged that is a valid criticism. I thought they had a really good line that was this is from Eric Westbrook, and their project is this thing called Witches. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that in these early days it's still really hard to convert gamers to blockchain, and it's easier to convert blockchain to gamers, which I think is like a really concise way of understanding like a lot of the hostility and what's going on. Anyway, all to say that I then followed that up with a comment that was, and by the way, I read your website 3 times and I don't know what your game is, but I think it's a card game. Can you tell me if I'm right? And then they said they had also fallen victim to the exact same thing of that it's easier to pull in blockchain people that just want to get on the next piece of hype. That frequently feels like, oh, this is just the way to like the money that you took from the previous pyramid scheme, launder it into this new one that's hot. And then just as the suckers catch up, like move it into the next one. And at some point, cash out your earnings and, someone else is left to hold the bag. Anyway, what video games are we looking forward to in 2022?
Pokemon comes out in 2 weeks.
It does. That, Cado, I'm curious about. So, no game attracts. This game looks like shit, but I'm gonna play it anyway. Than Pokemon.
Yeah.
And I feel like that has been because people have so little understanding of how this game's actually going to play.
Yeah.
But I have seen more hand wringing over what this game looks like, tied up in a lack of switch to Discord. Like, there's a lot of anxieties going into this game, which is finally they're making the kind of dream game that we've been talking about for 20 years, maybe. But also maybe it looks a little crappy. Yeah. So I'm curious where you have landed on this before. Hopefully I get you a code maybe by the end of the week. That would fit the timeline of when Nintendo drops this. There's 2 ways that we get codes from Nintendo, and I mean specifically us as an outlet. Where I think we fall on the middle ground with Nintendo, which is like, well, we think you're interesting, but not that interesting. We'll either get the code for a game the day of, like late in the day, well after you could have purchased it yourself in the eShop, or we get it 2 weeks in advance. Like that's kind of how Nintendo operates, and so I feel like tomorrow is the day of reckoning for you, Cado. It's like I will have that for you in advance, and you can do some real thinking and playing, or you're gonna struggle to wonder if you should purchase it before I can give you a code.
Yep.
But where are you sitting on that game right now?
I mean, I'm sitting I'm really. Like all the ways that they've shown, like mechanically, the kind of changes seem really interesting, but also it doesn't look visually all that great. Like they are doing wide expanses in a way that Game Freak hasn't demonstrated they can do well, and that doesn't show well in Green Scott.
Breath of the Wild aesthetic, yet somehow seems to look worse than a game that was originally built for the Wii U.
Yes. It's part of something about the way that they decided to make that artistic style like translate into this new form is like not the spaces don't look good, but that can also be like we've seen very small clips, right? Like, it's always been very bite-sized kind of
today I think was the biggest. There's like a 15-minute gameplay video that came out today. I haven't watched it yet, but
I haven't either. I saw the tweets going out about it while we started recording. I was like, shit. But it doesn't. Those spaces and that art style, the art style of like the character design and the new Pokemon that they've shown looks great, looks interesting. I love the fucking Voltorb that's half made out of wood because it's olden times. So instead of looking like a Pokemon that's made out of a Pokeball that's made out of metal, it looks like they're Pokeballs that are made out of wood in back then.
Would still have some fucking magic that keeps them in there.
Yeah,
here's my old timey Pokeball, but it still works. Just got
you throw it and they go inside. Don't worry about it. We have to make this part out of wood, but
God, that is funny. It's really good.
It's really good. It's because it's basically the Sinnoh region, a place we've been before. Sinnoh being they released the Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, I believe. Or was it Shining Pearl, Brilliant Diamond? Whatever. Those remakes, it's the same area there, right? But like way back in time, right? Like you're aiming at like a vaguely feudal Japan era game situation going on. And like the things they've shown about how they are making battles slightly different, giving you like different modes that you can do attacks in seems interesting. Interesting wrinkle on the Pokemon battle system, and like the fact that Pokemon will attack you, the person, right? Like a thing that from the beginning, like that was always the quote unquote danger of going out into the world in Pokemon. Professor Oak stops you from going into the tall grass because like you're gonna get fucking murked by some Pokemon. You need your own. But that never actually bears out in mechanics or anything else really in those games. And now it's like, oh, you're walking around in the wild. You can get like some of these fuckers are like, it's basically a grizzly bear. It's gonna maul you, and you have to like deal with that. And that part, all of that, the bits and pieces they're picking out of like the fantasies we had as children about what this would look like expanded, that original like blue and red expanded, look great and interesting. And it's just, it looks like they don't know how to texture wide expanses, or they don't have enough processing power for like enough grass to make the grass look like grass. I don't know. It looks bad, but I feel like playing it, I might not care, you know?
And in theory, this is like the beginning of a foundational pillar of, like, they're not going to not make 10 more of these. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
right.
like, that's, they haven't waited this long to do this version of the game to then abandon it, even if this one has some growing pains. Because, I mean, people have wanted this type of approach to Pokemon, like real-time Pokemon, like that all people have been asking for is like, let me catch them myself. And so I have to imagine that whatever the rough edges here, like the Switch 2 will exist one day, and then Game Freak will make one for a more technically competent Switch that you'll still complain about the aesthetics, because like Game Freak just does not seem to also possess the same ability to do what Nintendo frequently does so well, which is to use artistry and aesthetic to help mask their like the technical deficiencies of the hardware in which it's built upon. You know,
like
even
Breath of the Wild was on this.
Yeah, Breath of the Wild, like, you know, that's just Nintendo's bread and butter. Is like making games look incredible that don't have bleeding edge tech. And so, can I throw a curveball out here? I have to presume Hogwarts Legacy is coming out this year.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see them navigate this, because
will they?
You know, so the most recent I didn't watch it, but they did like
the
some
20th anniversary.
The 20th anniversary, like Harry Potter retrospective that brought back like a bunch of the actors. Pointedly only featured like retroactive, like archival footage of J.K. Rowling, and they made a point to like put as a caption in there, like 2019, like say, hey, we didn't send a camera crew to talk to her, like these are old camera crews that talk to her, and you know, and this is a game that like the publisher has had to put out statements being like, she wasn't involved, y'all. Like, and obviously that's like is not absolution, like, but the complicated tensions surrounding this game, where like, you know, you've also had like the Bloomberg report that like, hey, you'll be able to make a trans character in the game, like a small, you know, a poke in the eye to Rowling, like in a game that's built on a universe that will continue to make her money. So it's not it is really just, I'm fascinated to see how they do or don't navigate that, what they like, what lines they are willing to walk up to or not, what happens when people who work on the game have to go out there and talk about it. Maybe COVID aids them in this respect, in which like, you know, can't really do a lot of press interviews, like, you know, so we'll only do like the friendliest stuff possible to try and get around it. And so it's really, you know, I have, you know, I don't really care if that game is good or not, but I'm fascinated as a project how they work their way around all of that, because it is of the things that are Harry Potter related that are coming out, it is the one that seems at tension with itself, even as a project, which is just not usually the case. Like, you know, the people working on the Fantastic Beasts movies, I remember, what's that fuckface's name? Freddie, no, who's the guy who plays the main character in that? What's the... he always does the Oscar bait movies. Fred Mayer. What's his name? What the fuck?
Wait,
the little soft boy wizard?
The Fantastic Beasts guy. The guy.
Yeah, he played Stephen Hawking.
Eddie
also.
Redmayne.
Eddie Redmayne.
Yeah. He was like, whereas you had like the trio of like, original Harry Potter actors being like, basically like, fuck J.K. Rowling, like she can eat shit. He was out there being like, well, you gotta, respect, people have and so, like that's a project in which like it doesn't appear that like anyone involved cares to do any pushback. And so I'm just curious. I'm just curious to see how they ride that, because it could be an extremely good video game and it's still going to have to deal with an enormous amount of backlash with the baggage that it comes with. So I
just don't know how, like, I think some of it is also just how much excitement is left for Harry Potter, like, especially because like Rowling did everything possible to like salt that earth.
Really? And also the new movies suck, right? Like even if like,
terrible.
Like the new movies are terrible. Like all her extensions of the universe have been complete shit. Also, frequently involving explaining how wizards shit. It's just like just terrible. So yeah, like not surprising that people were very excited for like a retrospective about the thing that like was celebrating the things they fell in love with in the first place, disconnected from the monster who created them. I think you're right. Like I like.
But they still some ways, this Eddie Redmayne.
Yeah.
All
right. What about you, Rob? What's one that you're looking forward to this year?
Oh man. So I spoke intemperately once upon a time.
Okay.
About
once
not being interested in a new Gran Turismo. But then today they posted footage of a racing lap at the Daytona at the Daytona circuit, not the oval, but the circuit that they do endurance racing on. And I was like, that looks pretty good. I don't know if it's just the compression on the shitty Twitter video or not, but it looks real. It looks the way this sort of footage would tend to look if you saw like a racing highlight package on Twitter. And I don't know. I mean, like I am clearly like something is rattling around my head right now where I'm just like, I must play all the racing games all the time. That's just what I want to do. I want to compare them, want to contrast them. I want to drive the same cars on the same tracks in a bunch of different games. And so like Gran Turismo coming and being like, I guess, Horizon 5 is probably the, it's a current gen game, but I am really interested in seeing a Gran Turismo that is like, cutting edge. It's been a long time since we've seen that from the series. And so I actually am interested in that, because like when this series was at its height, it was one of the best, maybe the best, like car RPG games, right? Where, you build your collection, you upgrade your cars, you test out the new upgrades on different circuits. And so I am interested in seeing that come back. And some of the, like, I'm curious how far beyond that template they go, because I think that has also become such a bog standard template of like car games that you have to be doing other stuff as well. And some things I've seen suggest that like there will be a little bit more motorsport stuff in it, and I'm into that. So I have come around. Like, it turns out that as we get proximate to Gran Turismo, I don't give a shit about that. Why are you showing me this, Sony? Has turned into show me more. Tell me what the artisans at Polyphony have been up to all these years.
Cado, what about you?
I mean, if we want to go chronologically, next up, in theory, is Elden Ring, right?
Yeah, like I thought about that one, but I feel like we've said our piece. Like,
Yeah.
Of course, we're looking forward to Elden Ring.
Obviously.
Now it's just like the slow, the wait to actually play it and kind of see what that thing is beyond that really exceptional, a preview that we got a couple months back. Now it's been fun to watch people use hacked PS4s to like keep it on their on the hard drives and playable, and like take out the fog gates.
Oh my god!
And like explore, like find monsters that weren't meant to be seen quite yet. I remain very excited for Elden Ring. At this point, it's sort of like I kind of like had it. It's sort of left my mind because now I'm just sort of okay. When it arrives, I'm ready to see what it is. It comes at like 3 other like massive games come at the same time. Like Dying Light 2 is finally coming out. Horizon Forbidden West will also be coming out. And so those are just like 2, like there are like 3 40-hour games coming out all like roughly in a similar window, which is that's a lot. But I feel like that's going to happen a lot over the course of COVID, is like games are just going to collide into one another because it's like becomes so much. It's hard enough to project when a release date is going to happen. But then once you're able to commit to it, you sort of just have to like grab the reins and get the game out the door, because who knows what's going to happen around you with everything else that's coming out.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
That Advance Wars reboot is supposed to happen this year, isn't it?
That was supposed to come out last year. Got delayed
into this year.
Into this year. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the art style there of that new one, but I am here for them to bring back Advance Wars.
Yeah.
If only to bring Advance Wars back, which would presumably mean they might make
more Advance Wars. Yeah. I really enjoyed those, like the first 2 of those games on
I'm excited to go back and like to see if I can get into it now, because I was not into like the XCOM reboot is what cracked strategy games for me after giving up on them at post like the Command and Conquer Warcraft 2 era of strategy games. And so I tried Advance Wars when they came out, but like it just didn't do anything for me. And also like it seemed a lot of it people, well, I also I didn't know how to play them, right? And a lot of it was like do versus, and it's like I don't know, that didn't do anything for me. I like playing like the campaign, sort of like it's a puzzle that you're sort of figuring out. So I don't know. I'm curious to see how those games do or don't bounce off me, having now played at least a decent number of strategy games since they originally came out. Did you play Advance Wars, Rob? You don't strike me as someone that was playing a bunch of
not advanced enough for me.
Jesus
wow.
Christ.
Wow. I'm actually curious what you would think of them. I think they're very fun, but they are on the lighter end, I guess, of tactics.
I don't know. We made Rob play the last Fire Emblem, and that wasn't necessarily the most pleasant experiences from a gameplay perspective.
But what a visual novel!
What a visual novel. Hopefully we get there. That there's the rumors they're doing a Final Fantasy Tactics remaster, which is like the ultimate strategy game that I know I would love if they re-released it in a form that I would want to play.
I need to play that game ever. I hear so much about it, and it feels like it'd be right up my fucking alley.
I played it when it came out, and it was like, I don't understand how to play this. And so it was like, I love Final Fantasy. Maybe I would love Tactics. It turns out that was not, those things did not necessarily ebb from one flow right into the other. But now I would be in a position to appreciate, because I know that people always say that Tactics has like one of the better stories in a Square game. So I would be game to try that. One on here, which is another curveball, but not about a transphobe. At some point this year, probably late this year, my guess is tied to the movie. But Ubisoft is making that Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora game, and I remain fascinated by Avatar as a cultural object, because I think was it Avengers Endgame at a certain point overtook it, and then due to like re-releases because of COVID, like Avatar retook its like sort of like financial crown as like the movie had made the most, throwing out. I
don't understand.
Yeah, well, and so what I remain, the game they're making, very expensive. Has been 6-7 years in the making, tied to a sequel to a movie that came out more than 10 years ago. I look, it's like hard to bet against James Cameron. Like the man constantly like enjoys like putting himself up against a wall and then proving everybody wrong. And maybe through sheer force of will, he can make Avatar 2 interesting, compelling, and like a huge success. If you call something an event,
at least a huge success. I don't know about the first two.
I don't know. Yeah, well, in this day and age, does one not to also mean the other? I'm just it's like finally coming to a head on what is the legacy of Avatar and what do people think of it. The question can finally be answered, and Frontiers of Pandora is like one version of that being answered, even though it could be the case that Avatar 2, the movie, sucks shit and like the game is fine. But I don't know. I think the Avatar movie sucks, but I came out of it not understanding what was so cool about it beyond the whiz bang, 3D effects of being in the theater. But I don't know. So I remain fascinated by what that may or may not be. And so I remain fascinated by Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, because I just need to know. I just need James Cameron to answer this for me. What does the world think of Avatar 2?
I have a question. Do we think Breath of the Wild 2 comes out this year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're hitting that? Okay. Then I'm obviously very excited for that as well.
Last whispers I had heard about it, which are whispers past to whispers, but whispers that I do trust. Like, I guess I would be surprised if it didn't come out this year.
Right.
Is what I would say. I think, you could make an argument for them pushing it if it seemed credible that there was like a Switch 2 reasonably on the horizon.
Right.
But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think like between chip shortages and Switch continuing to sell super well, like there's no motivation for Nintendo to do anything but just patiently wait until probably late 2023 to do another piece of hardware. But so my guess is that would come out this year. And yeah, I still like don't know kind of what that game, like, what the game is, but like there's so many specifics about it. Like even at that most recent trailer that showed us like, oh, like the sky stuff and like hints of how the mechanics are going to work, but it leaves a lot to the imagination. And I'm almost compelled to not watch anything more from it. Like, what do I need to know about Breath of the Wild 2? Like, first game was incredible. Hope they keep, the weapon degradation. Cowards. Don't give in to the mob. Don't give in.
Weapon degradation was fucking great.
You want to put in mechanics and ways for people to ease that curve for themselves if they want to, that's fine. That's fine. But leave that. I guess that's the question, Cado. Do you think they leave it in?
Yes. I would bet yes. I would bet yes. I don't think there's been enough of a actual, like, there's been a lot of griping about it, but I don't think anyone's made a really consistently compelling case for its total removal, other than they didn't like it very much. Like, I don't know. There's like certain things where like sequels happen and like people like they take into account things that people like got mad about, but I feel like this was a case of more louder than there being a lot of it.
And that's why I think they'll respond to it by giving players more options.
Sure.
Like I don't think it will go completely unaddressed. Like, yes, it was kind of annoying sometimes to be climbing a mountain and then to fall off because the lightning showed up. You know what I mean? Like,
was
you were wearing
it at
metal.
Kotaku? I think it might have been like Kotaku Australia. Or maybe it was just Luke, which is a different sort of Kotaku.
well, Kotaku, there's Kotaku Australia, and then there's Luke Plunkett from Kotaku who lives in Australia. Those are different things.
I just remember a thread of they woke up late and their kid had access to their Switch and was like, Daddy, can I play Breath of the Wild? And I was, sure, sweetie, go ahead.
Oh, this is going to be a single save tragedy.
And they open their save.
No.
And all like a page's worth of like end game, like max tier weapons just shattered and ruined. And the only thing the kid had been doing was like killing bokoblins. Like, it's just like not a single boss, not a temple.
Wow.
Just killing trash mobs.
That's so good. Kids rule.
God, that's amazing.
Jessica made me do one time where she was during COVID. She was watching me play. I think they re-released Super Mario 3D World. And she was like, "Has that Princess Peach?" And I was like, "Yep." It's like, "Can I try it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Like, and so I handed her the controller, and she, didn't really have a grasp of like moving around in the 3D space, but she was able to like go in a direction and hit the jump button, and so she would just jump Princess Peach off of a ledge and just cackle. Lives don't matter, but they are like a source of friction in 3D World. And so I was torn between, although I don't care if my kids play video games, I want to encourage their interests. And if that happens with video games, that's fine. Where I was like, okay, like if you want to mess with this. And she just spent the next 20 to 25 minutes just taking Princess Peach, killing her over and over, and like taking me from like 75 lives to 6, and then being like, "I'm bored. Can I get a snack?" And just like throwing the Joy-Con. I don't think I picked up the game after that. I was in like one of the end worlds, and I just never finished it.
I feel like that's Yoshi's interior life, though. Just like staring at these assholes, being like, "I could fling you into the abyss, just dump you off, and then I could eat. Then I could just go back to my island with the bows heavy with fruit, and never see you again." So things that like I'm super excited for, again, like not a surprise, but like, man, I'm ready for some Darktide. Like Vermintide, but in 40K. I'm all in. I have fallen down a 40K rabbit hole this year. I'm like learning the entire campaign history of the Tanith First and Only, aka Gaunt's Ghosts.
Do you have any armies?
Oh God, like I would play Warhammer.
Yeah,
the tabletop game.
The tabletop.
No. Why would I do that?
God.
I like playing war games, and I like reading books, and I like military sci-fi. I don't like arts and crafts.
Wow.
Yeah, and I am just not going to go down that rabbit hole, and like force myself to learn to paint my armies, so that I can play what by all accounts is just like an okay tabletop game. Like, it's fine.
Wow. Okay.
This is not a controversial opinion.
Okay.
Like, by Mini's rules, the Warhammer tabletop games are not like particularly well regarded. But Darktide, like if they nail the vibe for that, and I think at times with Vermintide they did. The thing that does give me reservation is I actually didn't like the Vermintide games that much. I wanted to, but so much of it was about like swinging swords and shit. But like, I don't think that shit ever felt good.
Right.
And so I'm like a little more interested in a 40K setting where it can be a little bit more of like more of a traditional shooter type thing, co-op shooter, than the sort of floaty combat that Vermintide can kind of fall into.
The Aliens Fireteam Elite in 40K universe. Rob is nodding.
Yeah, this is. I think we should all be playing more of those games.
We should be. It's been a couple of years now. I feel like 2022 would be prime timing for Creative Assembly, who did Alien Isolation. They've been working on a new sci-fi IP for a couple of years now. After Isolation 2 didn't happen. I'm very like. There's so much promise in what they should like. Isolation. Yes, it was way too long, but like so many good things in there. Like, oh my God, like that team taking another swing at like another first person game. That
Dude,
would be
it, like,
exciting.
Alien Isolation is like, I don't think it's just that it's a fascinating game, though it does have one of the best like opening 3 or 4 hours of like anything you'll ever play. I think it's also just like there is nothing else like it. There really isn't. And it is such like a singular approach to designing a game like this. And you know, almost like the version that smooths out the rough edges won't feel as good. That's the other thing, right? It's like kind of the ways it sucks are also why it's such a memorable game. And so it's like one of those things where like I think it happens once, right? And the minute you have like I'm with you, I'm so curious like if they ever lift the covers on what exactly they're doing there. That's cool, but I also feel like, man, Alien Isolation, the things that would probably be top of list of like, here's what we have to do better next time, would probably like raise Metacritic scores, and like you and I might just bounce the fuck off it.
Well, yeah, I wish that game had sold better in tandem with the quality of what it was. But at the same time, I think we also ended up in the correct universe, which is that they didn't make an Alien Isolation 2. And that they take their lessons from building a game like that and put it into like a really, really big swing from, you know, the same team. On that note, I don't know what the note is, licensed games, but I'm pretty soon we should have been playing Marvel's Midnight Suns, the Firaxis card Marvel game that got delayed to the summer, late spring. It's no longer.
So I feel like
imminent.
card is a strong word.
Yeah. Yes. I still liked, you know, when they put out that game, like actual gameplay video of showing how sort of a round works out. I got far more excited about it than I was after learning kind of like when they showed the trailer. I was excited. When they first started talking about it, I got less excited. Then they showed like a long gameplay demonstration. I got more excited. I mean, I trust that team implicitly. Like they have not steered me wrong. XCOM, 1 and 2 are all-time greats. They're a team that got me to understand what's interesting about a strategy game. They made one that works for complete dipshits like myself and also people like Rob and Austin who like are obsessed with strategy games. Like that is not like an easy mountain to climb. And so although like there's a lot about Midnight Suns that has me raising an eyebrow, it's also the case where it's a team. All right, like if this is what you wanted to spend your time doing, given that you're a team that probably could have done anything and that you weren't assigned a Marvel game, you chose a Marvel game and you chose to like switch up the gameplay into a more like real time sensibility. I'm ready to be convinced. I'm like, arms wide open, want to know why this is the direction they went in. And so that remains like a game high on my list because it's one of those rare instances where I find myself cautious and not pessimistic, just cautious about the changes that have been made, but have never been more excited to be like to realize within 5 minutes, like, oh yeah, of course you couldn't have done this any other way. Because that team is just so smart.
Yeah. I think in that vein, Weird West is one that I've definitely got my eye on as well in terms of like magical tactics with some stealth elements. It's from one of the designers of Dishonored. So like that is one that I've definitely got my eye on because it like in some ways it looks a little bit like sort of the Commandos inspired gameplay of like Shadow Tactics, but it also looks a little bit more like they're working on making the actual like when shit's popping off and you're using your characters like in combat is maybe a little more oriented toward making that fun as well, which is where I think a lot of those stealth games tend to fall down. I think the problem of stealth, I think actually gets worse in stealth tactics games where like if you set the entire thing up to be like, well, you're going to use all these tactics to stay stealthy. Now it really feels like you fucked up when you like solve the puzzle incorrectly and now you go loud. I think most of those games have that problem. I'm hoping Weird West kind of like sidesteps it. Unfortunately, the only thing is I'm not sure the setting does a lot for me. Like I'm intrigued by the idea of the game. Nothing they've shown though, like my relationship with Dishonored is very much like my imagination is always journeying in the world of Dunwall, right? Like I never fully leave. I'm always like, man, Dishonored, all the stuff about that world, the Outsider, those various settings, Weird West. I'm like, yeah, okay, Eldritch Cowboys, I gotcha. That's cool. Hope those game mechanics are good. They look good, but the setting doesn't exactly like spark a lot for me.
Yeah.
Last picks here because we gotta dash to a meeting.
Oh yeah,
real quick.
Oh, we do. Maybe quick. Is there a last one you want to shout out, Cado?
I was just gonna say in the vein of tactics, the one that I forgot was coming out this year also, but I enjoyed the demo of when it came out last year. Triangle Strategy.
Yeah,
the next from the Octopath Traveler devs.
They need to just commit to that name. At
Triangle
this point,
Strategy.
They've gone too far.
God.
Do not give it
Oh my God.
Knights of the whatever. Don't give it a formal name. Stick to Triangle Strategy. Like, own it.
Yeah, I would love that. But I really enjoyed that little slice that they put out. The tactics were cool, and the sort of dialogue choices that will change your path were like fun. And I think that the world they set up seems interesting. You know, a war over salt, a war over steel. It's just like feels right and good in that way that like it's got my attention. I'm interested to play more of it.
Stray, which is the Annapurna cat game, that's been shown a couple of times. You know, I don't really know what that thing is, but it looks gorgeous and like the premise rules. And so I can do nothing more than just hope that Annapurna's general bar of quality, 12 minutes aside, leads to something that is satisfying beyond some really cool trailers. But like that is one where we don't know when it's coming. I feel like that'll just go like it's out in 3 weeks, something like that. But that remains kind of like the top of my list of a game that every time it comes up, people lose their shit because, of course, like a cute looking cat in a sci-fi world is very novel. But I remain interested to see how that actually pans out because that should come out this year.
Yeah, and I think for me, like, thing that I'm like sort of nervously anticipating, like Homeworld 3. Honestly, it's sure. Like, I like the studio a lot. I think Homeworld games have always been really cool. I think they also ended up being cult hits for a reason. And I'm curious if some of those issues can be solved this time around. But I think most importantly, it's like Homeworld is again like one of those games that's such a vibe that independent of like how the game works. I think it like that series in general has done better at like the Kubrickian coldness and like iciness of space and like sci-fi settings. They've always done that really, really well, and I'm just in the mood for that kind of flavor. I am so done with like really pedestrian visions of space where it's all like, how many bright, colorful nebulae can we shellac in the background? How much can we crowd the frame with big, detailed, like overly ornate starships? I'm like a little more interested in this notion of like just the vast expanse and these huge fleets that you zoom out like to resolve into like tiny little pinpricks of light and explosions. That stuff always does it for me. I'm hoping that like Homeworld 3 can not only channel some of that like feeling from the previous games, but can also maybe reach a new audience that's there not just for nostalgia.
Related, I hope Starfield is good. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
That'd be nice if that game was good.
You think that game comes out this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. 100%. They announced a date. They won't miss it. I don't think.
All right. Really? I mean, you can always miss a date.
But
you can
really?
always miss a date.
I have confidence that like that team announcing like more than a year in advance is I mean, look, anything can happen. It's COVID. Like, I'm not going to like wed myself to that. But I like, if you were asking me to bet, I would bet that they hit the date.
All right.
I mean, it's true. It's true. They have a track record of hitting a date regardless the state of the game.
Sure, that's sort of what I mean.
Right.
I think that game is just like that game is like a huge pivot point for the future of Xbox, like as a platform that they don't have games like that come along very often. And so I expect that game will arrive on November 11th.
And within 6 months, integrated Nexus Mod Manager support built right into your Xbox. Microsoft being like, so honestly, like Starfield is finished. You just need this total conversion mod. And that is now the experience we recommend. That is a wrap on today's episode of Waypoint Radio. If you want more from Waypoint, you can follow us on Twitter at Waypoint. You can follow us on Facebook and YouTube, Waypoint Vice. You can follow me on Twitter at Rob Zachney Patrick.
At Patrick Klepek.
Cado.
At _Cado_appears.
For our Waypoint Plus listeners, we just actually did that go through, Cado?
That went through? Yeah, it's out.
Yeah, cool. For our Waypoint Plus listeners, we just published our show on The Matrix Resurrections. Had a long discussion about that, and spoiler, I was the odd person out. Little underwhelmed, but we had a lot of fun discussing the movie.
More than made up for by 3 people going, masterpiece!
So if that sounds good, or if you just want more Waypoint, you can go to waypointplus.com and subscribe. Not only do you get access to our premium feed, but you're also helping support Waypoint, especially Waypoint streams. I think this week we're going to be working through more of House of Ashes. Probably not finished. Well, at the rate we're going, House of Ashes might be finished with us.
Those games are developed to be pretty short. I think they're like no
Snackable.
longer than 6 hours. Yeah, like they're so maybe not to, all in one run, but pretty close.
All right, so once again, that's waypointplus.com. Our theme music is by Bowen. The track is Miss You off the EP Pale Machine. Learn more at waypoint.zone/BOEN. That's us calling it a week. We'll talk to you again next week. Until then, fuck capitalism. Go home.
Is it bright?
There's a lot of cool video games coming out this year. In the next 6 weeks alone, Cado.
Oh, video games. Right. That future.
Yeah, don't look outside your window.
Sorry, just opening my Surface.
Oh my God.
Got a little list written down here. Jotted down some musings.
Can't pull that up in a tab. Got to open up in the Surface.